Hi, and welcome to another live episode of Marketplace Masters, brought to you by Merchant Spring, the leading marketplace analytics platform for Amazon agencies and vendors. Now, Marketplace Masters strives to go deeper into the challenges that vendor and agencies face to lift e-commerce and marketplace performance via practical actions and insights. I'm your host, Paul Sonneveld, and today we're going to learn how you can diversify risk and maximize the opportunity by launching brands in multiple countries. And we're going to look at this from both a strategic as well as an operational point of view. Now, to help us do this, I've invited Stef van Boekel to join us and share his expertise and perspectives. Now, before I hand over to him, let me introduce him to you. Stef is the founder of Marketplace Distri, a European Amazon operator and accelerator. He has launched more than 100 brands from startups, SMEs to Fortune 500 companies in European markets and has generated millions of sales for these customers in the process. It goes without saying that he brings a lot of experience to the conversation today. So thank you very much for being on the show today, Stef.
Thank you, Paul.
It's absolutely lovely. I know this is your bread and butter. So I thought, look, maybe to kick us off, let's start really with the basics, top line. I'm a very successful brand and I'm operating in my home market that may be the UK or maybe the US or even Australia where I'm based.
Right.
Why should I think about expanding internationally? What's in it for me?
Well, good question. Unfortunately, just a few are actually really considering that option. If you look on a European level, there are less than 2% actually selling on an international level. So the majority is like you, successful in a home country and maybe reach maturity when it comes to market and your product to market fit. And you want to grow. Now, if you don't want to grow, basically you have two options, or you extend your product portfolio, which obviously is also an expensive project, or the other option that you have is basically reaching out new markets with existing products. Obviously, what is nice is when you use the Amazon platform, you take with you your ASIN with all the reviews related to it. We really advise everybody to think without borders, because in my expertise and in my opinion, it's also the only way how to basically survive on the long term. If I would directly say what would be the first thing to do is to say, I do not have a preference in which market I'm going to sell. So if you're from the UK, maybe thinking, let's go to Germany because that's the next biggest market. Or when you're for example, from the Netherlands, you think, what's my neighbor countries, Belgium and Germany. But I think the biggest thing that you should let go is basically to choose the market that is most accessible instead of focusing more on the market that brings the large opportunity.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. How do you evaluate and make that trade-off, right? So let's take a practical example. I'm in the UK. I guess I'm separated by water from everywhere else. Let's say I'm in the Netherlands, right? Much more practical, right? I could go south, Belgium, France. Belgium obviously just launched, very small. Probably want to skip over that, maybe not. German, probably, depending on how you count, third or fourth largest Amazon market. Really big, but language a bit different. What are the trade-offs when it comes to a decision like that?
Well, basically what everybody does is indeed look at the neighbor countries, but let's just focus on where is your largest market. So what you maybe don't know is that the total European market is larger than the US, 50% larger. The average spending is higher, and you have half of the sellers that you have in the US. So the market is not that saturated as you see, for example, in the US, or versus the US at least. So what we typically do is start checking in all the 9 countries Amazon is live with, including in Belgium. how's your product category doing? What kind of reviews are there? Who are your competitors? In which price category are they active? What kind of product specifications do they have? So you basically start looking at what's the larger market, then start calculating with the different VAT levels if you would what the return would be after all the deductions. And in the meanwhile, you also start cross-checking who are your top competitors, what kind of reviews are they making, how long have they been selling on the platform, how is the presentation of the product page, how are the specifications when it comes to quality versus price. So basically you consider all kinds of, let's say, requirements before you need to check some boxes before you can actually say, okay, this market this is the size, this would be the margins we're able to make, this how much we need to invest to make at least to start getting some awareness. And from there, obviously, you have a budget available. Most probably, you start choosing the market and the products that most probably are on the short term, the ones that are going to bring the most success.
Yeah. And obviously, size is massively important. Really, we're talking about size of the market, competition. That gives you a sense of, maybe how much share can you capture, and therefore, what's the revenue you can look to project. Outside of that sizing piece, what do you feel? What are the other main considerations that you talk to customers about on whether to choose between? Let's say, in all very hypothetical, but let's say you're deciding between going to Germany. Right? Actually, this is a question I get a lot in terms of the US. Right? So US sellers looking to expand outside of the US want to go to a big market. You've got Germany. Pretty big market. You got Japan, pretty big market, right?
Right.
I haven't done the exact numbers, but how do you navigate through a trade-off like that? Let's assume kind of the opportunity is similar. What is the next set of considerations you want to think about?
Well, once you basically have the idea of the market potential, then it becomes on, let's say, the step towards reaching that market. So basically what I always say, begin with the end of mind and start making the steps back, how to start reaching that customer in Germany, so that the customer in Germany has the idea he's buying something locally. So that starts with making sure you can ship next day. If you want to have a next day delivery, that means you need to have storage in that country. If you want to have storage in that country, that also means you need to have a VAT number in that country. So it becomes then, once you have set up that structure to be able to ship and to sell, then obviously what you also need to consider is the product's compliance. On a European level, but also the Amazon level, you have obviously the content-related activities. So that is the product page optimization. That needs to be done by a company that is specialized in Amazon keyword research in that country. So start with market research, then the operational part, and then basically making sure you're compliant, and then you should be able to make you have a plan available to start selling in Germany or any other country you basically want to start with, because the process is always similar. Where the variety is basically on the country level, right? On product and on country level, the compliance can be different, the requirements can be different. But obviously also the VAT levels are completely different. For example, in Sweden you pay 25%, in Germany you pay 19%. So there is no such thing as a European strategy. I always say you need to have a localized approach with a local partner that understands the market. Once you have that, then you can pretty much scale rapidly.
Yeah, I was going to ask, and I appreciate the fact that you're saying, okay, there's no such thing as one European market, but there must be things that are easier, going from one European country to another versus going from, say, the UK to the US, right?
Also.
What are things that are marginally easier by expansion within Europe? What are the bits that are just a little bit easier than having to go into an expansion outside somewhere in Europe? Obviously assuming that your home country is in Europe already.
Right. No, it's a good point. I think what it basically starts is that you need to have a European hub. That European hub that does, for example, your stock management and your stock control for the 9 other countries. So that is once you have set up that location, you are from a logistical point of view and operational pressure point of view are pretty much set to be able to more relatively easily start selling in other countries. So, for example, let's take Belgium. Belgium recently opened like a couple of weeks ago, but keep in mind that Amazon launched now 4 countries in the last 2 years. So they went from 5 to 9 countries. They were having over 10 years the same 5, and now just in 2 years you see 4 new countries being launched. That I think also is shows basically the potential in the European market because there is the growth. Once you have a warehouse setup, for example, we have in the Netherlands, and we need to start doing stock control towards Belgium, that's a much more easy thing to organize because most probably once you have the European hub, you have a European logistical providers, and then you're much more easy to able to make delivery contracts, for example, towards Belgium. And that is one of the practicalities. Another really specific example that is only basically happening in Belgium is that in Belgium they speak Dutch and France. So once you already have your translations done in France and in Dutch, you can actually start selling in those countries without doing a lot of investments and preparing the listing. But the same also with the customer support. So those are some practical things that definitely is helpful in basically reaching new marks every time it opens. So Germany we have now Germany, Austria is all sort of open, and that obviously is also still Germany. And so you have some more of those advantages specifically on a European level.
Yeah, no, for sure. You raised a really interesting point about Amazon Belgium, actually, and I'm really intrigued because, I'm kind of intrigued why Amazon decided to launch in Belgium, right? Obviously, they launched in the Netherlands 2 years ago, and we had Bol.com, very strong domestic player, and it was really about, in a way, very established market, but Amazon wasn't playing in it, so it was an opportunity to go there. I'm not familiar enough with the Belgian market to say, what was going on there, but I know it's small, and also geographically, surely there's not like a delivery lead time advantage in terms of, ordering product that sits in a Belgian warehouse versus something that sits right on the border, across the border in Germany, right? A little bit off piste here, but if you were to guess, why do you think, what's Amazon's playbook here in terms of opening up in Belgium?
Well, I think if you look at Amazon, a majority of companies, I think is the most common way to start growing your business, diversifying also for Amazon risk and opportunity. So I think they cannot. So if you look at where Belgium is, all surrounding countries already have Amazon active. So it would be for me also a bit specific if they would decide not to start working with Belgium, because from that perspective they already surrounded Belgium. When you look at, for example, Bol.com, Bol.com is right now the largest player in the Netherlands as well in Belgium. But Amazon launched 2 years ago in the Netherlands as a newcomer. Right now, they're already the 4th largest player. So that shows how much they're moving up. From a customer experience level, the Bol.com experience is much better. Really, you cannot compare it. So I think also this was for Amazon the first time that they actually entered the market where they normally would say we win on price and product catalog and on service, while in the Netherlands they basically are losing on service. But how Amazon, for example, is now eating up the market. Why are they basically becoming the 4th already in a matter of 2 years? Is basically in price. They're 10% cheaper than in the Netherlands than Bol.com. So in the Netherlands we like discounts. I think like in the most countries. And so over time, I also expect that Amazon in the Netherlands will be a top 2 player, maybe a top 1 player in a period of 10 years. And with Belgium, it's the same. They need to start. They need to start like everybody else. And obviously, it's a small market relatively. If you look at a lot of other countries, but there's not a market that you can ignore. You cannot say we're going to start launching in Europe and forget countries that are based in West Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, look, that makes sense. And I'm sure they're making available a large catalog that's maybe not physical stock that resides in Belgium, but sourced from other parts of Europe to actually open up pretty big.
It's actually a big risk for the Dutch market. I'm actually having a radio interview in 2 weeks about the subject. I mean, if you look at Amazon right now, it is a top 4 player. In the current scenario, they will be a top 3 player within a couple of years. But less than 10% is actually happening by Dutch companies. So Dutch companies are finding it difficult to understand how Amazon works. No surprise for everybody in the Amazon industry. Same is happening also in Belgium, right? So Belgian companies say, okay, Amazon went live. So what do? They go to the traditional marketing companies. Hey, we want to start selling on Amazon. Then they realize it's not a marketing game, it's an operating game, which nobody understands, right? So you have some marketing agencies that explain you how to start advertising, but nobody's able to explain to you how the stock control works, how the compliance works, how the listing works, how the customer support in let's say seller support or vendor support in general works. So what you now see is that all the reviews, and that's not only the reviews, but I think what is the real danger, and but also the opportunity for the international companies, is that it's not only the money, but it's also the work that's going towards international companies. So we are having less, how do you say it, people being able to work on the largest e-commerce channel of the market. And I think that also shows a bit how the European market works, is that when I talk to an American, I'm going on holiday and they say, where are you from? I'm from the Netherlands. And then they expect that because I can drive to Germany, France, and Belgium and Luxembourg basically in one day. So they actually think that on a Sunday, if I have nothing to do, I'm just going to drive to Paris. But I can tell you that never happens, maybe once per year or something. So, and that also shows how the Europeans actually are thinking. Everybody only focuses on the local market, and the companies that are actually starting to think international. I'm not talking about the neighbor countries, but let's say all the 9 countries that Amazon is active in. There you also see that they are on the long term will be the winners because they gather more data, they have more resources on time to basically start eating away all the small players. So it's a big risk for the local players, specifically now for the newcomers, Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, and Poland.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I actually want to go back to the point that you made about international sellers, I guess, really taking advantage of these local markets opening up and essentially walking all over the domestic entrepreneurs because they've got such advantage in terms of experience and know-how and getting the most out of Amazon. And obviously, a lot of times they'll bring along with their established ASINs and their reviews, and they're just, I remember this happening in Australia when Amazon Australia opened, and all of a sudden, been live for 2 weeks, and I see watches being advertised with 12,000 reviews. I'm like, how is this possible in 2 weeks, right? But clearly advantage there. So
we really love to work with existing brands because the same as we do, we launch a product, then you directly have the proof of concept, proof of the product by all the reviews. So it really makes it more easy to scale. And to gather some market. And like I said, as a Dutch company, a Belgian company, you start from zero. And we all know how difficult it is to start. And then additionally, what you have is limited knowledge in the market. So there's also almost nobody where you can reach out and that is actually able to really set up a good plan. Unfortunately, what is the negative thing is that everybody thinks e-commerce is fast money, but obviously it isn't. Unfortunately, I don't have a Lamborghini.
It's hard to make money in e-commerce. Yes,
it's really, you have to have a long-term approach and start building up, reading the data, analyze, and then you have a good opportunity. But to go back to your original subject of the main subject, yes, that is happening right now is the existing sellers with 1 years up to 15 years experience are now entering Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, and Sweden, and just basically stealing away the complete market.
Yeah. So if just from their perspective, right? Because the thing that I often hear is, they're used to operating their home market. They're doing really good volume, hundreds of thousands a month, a lot of times more than that. And they then look at these small markets like Belgium, Sweden, Poland, Australia down here is sometimes part of that conversation. And there's always this bit around, the markets are small. Yes, I've got this first mover advantage and I can really build a position, but it's small and there's all this additional cost that I'm driving into my business, the complexity, right?
Well, I think I was having a dialogue on LinkedIn, and they was said, okay, what are the main reasons to do it? And then my question is, well, what happens if you don't do it? If you decide to stay only in your home market, and then the same thing happens, what's happening in the Netherlands, more entrepreneurs are reaching your market with smaller products, good resources. What's going to happen with your product? And I think you shouldn't look at it, like I said, in the Lamborghini market, that you want to get rich in 2 years. You need to look at it on a long-term perspective. And from a long-term perspective, I think the only way how to protect yourself is thinking without borders. So yes, obviously, any new product, any new market requires an investment. But if you invest right with the right partners, then your future on the long term looks bright. Because when you would, for example, start launching in Europe in 9 countries, there is already market differences. From an economical point of view, from trends point of view, from general product interest point of view, you're able to diversify, like the topic of this podcast, diversify your risk and your opportunity. So whatever happens in your home market, that could still be 50% of your revenue, for example, you're able to much better cope with the market fluctuations. Specifically, what we see today, right? So everybody is awaiting what's going to happen in the next months. If you're only depending on a few products in 1 or 2 countries, your risk is pretty large. So yes, of course, it requires some investment, but then ask yourself, what if I don't do it? Where will I be in 5 years?
Yeah, I think you're raising a really good point around, it's like any form of investing, right? The more asset classes, the more geographical spread, the more stable the returns, in the medium to long term, which is I think part of the issue is, as sellers, we often have this really short-term mindset, right? We hear these success stories and, how do I launch in that market and become a 6-figure or a 7-figure seller in 9 months, right? That's, and this is a bit of the culture that goes around there. And it's good to be reminded that it's about building a sustainable business, setting a strategy, and committing to the medium to long term, which is so true.
I think what obviously we are the same, right? So we are always trying to achieve the maximum result. But I think what's good to keep in mind, specifically in Europe, Amazon is an operating game. If you control the operations, then you're able to predict much more your success and also your profits. It's marketing obviously is important, but without having a good structure in place, you're basically not able to survive, because the variable costs are completely different on country level. And if you don't control it, if you didn't calculate that up front, then obviously you're taking a lot of risk. So our first step, if you look at what we then do, we analyze the market, we analyze on product, on country level, what are actually the returns after all the Amazon deductions, because those also vary on product and on country level. And basically from there, you have a much more realistic idea. Are you able to make some money, right? So if you have a product that is, for example, 40 euro, and you have a competitor that's able to sell for 30 euro and has very strong market positioning with good reviews, etc., then you can have a strategical reason, obviously, to position yourself. But if you are, for example, a FBA brand, then I would recommend to focus on the market that may be smaller, but there's less competition. but still smaller. When we say smaller, you can still reach 6 or 7 figure revenues, right? That's not that's always it's still a big market.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Can I just, you started to talk about cost, because at the start of this conversation, we spoke a lot about size and the opportunity and the revenue. And you just mentioned earlier, and I just want to zoom in on a little bit around cost differences between different markets.
Right.
Can you make that real for our audience and just give us some practical examples? Where have people just kind of been surprised at the cost differences between different markets? And
Sure. Well, I can give you some practical. So when I started 10 years ago, I've been in this industry already for 12 years. So I'm a real dinosaur in the marketplace industry. Back then, I needed to go to, if I wanted to sell to France, I need to make arrangement with the Post, or in the UK with Royal Mail. Right now, we can go set up European delivery contracts, return contracts. But for example, delivery return costs are completely different. So what, for example, happens is that you ship something to, for example, Denmark, and the product doesn't arrive, and the customer, I think in Denmark, his previous was, if you did not receive the product within 2 weeks, you can get your money back. So basically what happens, you ship a product to Denmark, it doesn't arrive, then you have to pay the customer back. So you lost the money and the product. Then depends per country, they ship back once per week, once per month, or once per whenever. Then you get your product back, and your product is also completely messed up because it's been in a warehouse for weeks in a row. So you also basically lose your product. So that is just a very practical example. If you're unable to really control the quality on product level, then you're unable to really predict the margins you're able to make in a country.
Yeah, it's a little scary, right? Because how do you know about all these different things? Imagine me trying to expand into Europe. I would have never thought about what you just mentioned, right? I just assumed.
I'll give you another example. I was selling a product, I don't know, you could use with your wrist, and I don't know, a sort of a fitness product. Then I was selling it, we're doing crazy good sales. And then there was a guy in front of a door, and he gave us a German document. I couldn't read German. I could speak German. I couldn't read it because it was for sure a legal document. So called a friend, hey, can you have a look? You're talking about that 10 years ago. Then they said, yeah, there was. you had a court. Somebody sued you, and you lost, and you have to pay 100,000 euro. And we said, why were we not informed upfront? No, because how it works with this type of situations, they first go to the court, then the judge decide if they're right or not, and then you can start filing. So basically, we were selling, having good time, and then basically in the meanwhile, there was already a judge making decisions about if he could actually start selling that, if he could able to sell a product in Germany. So those are really shitty things, expensive things. So seeing with any project, specifically when you're from America or from Australia, as an example, you're not going to find this knowledge very close to you. So you need to 100% work with specialized parties. And again, there's no such thing as a European strategy, right? So and make sure when you talk to those companies and to those persons that they have a local presence and local team, etc., because that is basically the only way how you can secure yourself, because you are the one taking the risk. Okay, so and you don't want to have those risks, you want to minimize the risk. So make sure you do this proper research up front with who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's finding the right partner. And, we'll talk a little bit about how you guys fit into this equation. But before we do have a question here from our live audience. And I'm just going to show it up and I'll read it out to you. It's got to do with taxes, right? Always, when it comes to Europe, there's always a tax question, right? So it comes from David. For a company that wants to expand in Europe at pan-EU level.
Yeah, I can read it. How can you cope with the tax complexity and the different language? Okay, so Unfortunately, if you want to offer next day delivery, what everybody expects in a country, you need to have a local VAT number. So that's something you need to set up with a specialized partner. So basically, you need to go. That specialized partner needs to go to the German government, to the French government, Italian, Spanish, whatever, and to basically open up the VAT number to do monthly filings and yearly filings. And obviously, they need to also be able to do the regular audits. So that's something you need to set up. There are a lot of specialized parties that can help you with that.
So can I just interrupt you there, Stef?
You have to have. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because you just mentioned something that I was completely unaware of. I always thought, you know what, when you want to sell in Europe, you go to the country where the VAT registration is the easiest and the quickest, and that covers you for all of Europe. But you just said, if you want to do next day delivery, VAT number in every single country, which is new news to me. So I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
That's correct. By European law, if you want to ship a next day delivery, that means that you need to have a warehouse in that country. When you ship from Germany to Germany, you need to have a German VAT number. Same for France, etc. It's a European law. You cannot avoid that. If you would say, okay, I'm just going to have my stock, for example, in Germany, and I would start job shipping to France, Italy, Spain, etc., you're not going to win, because still people expect next day delivery, or let's say 2 days delivery. If you do not offer that solution, you're not gonna win on the long term, because again, the companies that did invest in the next day delivery are gonna win from you. So that is the same thing also with your languages. Do not hire just a translator so if you're a brand, you want to have a uniform approach. If you're going to send your translation to a French translator, Spanish and Italian, and they do not communicate with each other, you're going to get a completely different brand approach. So that is something very risky, which we would not advise. Secondly, is make sure somebody is specialized in Amazon. In general, Amazon is not a side project, not for a warehouse, not for customer support agency, not for translators. Amazon is a completely different ball game. Okay, so it's in the details. So make sure you have a company that cooperates together, communicates together, and have one specialism. Then you can ensure you're gonna have the best reputation online.
I love that quote. I've written it down. Amazon is not a side project. I feel
when I see a vacancy, we're looking for an Amazon manager, then I always want to send them an email saying, okay, you're gonna fail. There is no such thing as an Amazon agency. You can maybe have a project owner that talks to all different departments, but you cannot manage Amazon, understand all the different things. But everybody here can confirm, right? It's a route to failure if you have somebody that needs to do stock control, compliance, marketing campaigns and everything. Is just not a doable situation. But again, why should you? I always say you should consider Amazon as the one that has 50% of the market, right? So the majority don't do that, right? They prefer to ignore that with one person you can manage the half of the e-commerce market, but that's obviously unrealistic.
Yeah. Human nature. We always looking for shortcuts, but they're
hard to get
when it comes to Amazon. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, look, we are past the half an hour mark, but this is a great segue actually to talk a little bit about you. This show is not necessarily about talking about business themselves, but you operate a very interesting business in the European marketplace space. Just tell us a little bit more about it, and specifically what kind of makes you guys different to most service providers out there?
So to give a bit of background, I've been doing this for 12 years. For 12 years, I've been basically the majority of those years, I was working as an interim manager inside companies to set up the operation to start selling to the consumer on the European level to marketplaces. Amazon is not a side project for any type of company. So in 2018, I decided it makes more sense to design the operation completely from zero, specifically towards the needs of Amazon. So I call it IaaS, Amazon Infrastructure as a Service. Basically, we are an operator that does everything in-house, the VAT file, the customer support, the translations. So we have offered this operational structure to brands and to agencies to basically launch on a pan-European level in 9 countries in a matter of weeks, without them having to invest in their own operation. So we are sort of an end-to-end solution. We organize the import until the delivery, until the customer support, everything basically to start working on a pan-European level by a specialized partner.
And for those that are watching today's show, Stef, you've raised a lot of questions, and actually I've got a lot of questions. I feel like I need to pick up the phone and apologize to a couple of people for giving them the wrong advice about Amazon Europe over the last few years. But for those that are actually thinking about expansion, maybe have been burnt in the past, and maybe want to get in touch with you just to sort of explore and form a more informed view on how to do this, what is a good way to get in touch with you and your colleagues?
Well, we have a website. It's called marketplacedistri.com, and there obviously you can find us. You can find me on LinkedIn, so you can connect me. And I think for the agencies here, we set up a special agency solution where the agency can focus on the performance marketing and account management, while we are on the background operating the day-to-day stuff. So you have your own seller account, but we are on the background making sure the VAT filing is done and everything. And I think if you want to explore if this is an interesting solution for your customers, and I advise do so, reach out. Then we just look at your current catalog, we look at the market, and we're going to show you what will be our approach, which timeline, deliverables, and obviously which costs are related. And then you have a realistic solution. So I think what is interesting now for an agency, if you focus, for example, on the US, with our IR solutions, you're able to extend your marketing services to 9 new countries, while you not have to invest in your own team or have to learn, let's say, about the European market. So just reach out and we'll talk. Basically, like I'm talking to you, I can talk to everybody and share.
And I'm sure, as everyone's seen, you are super approachable. So that is fantastic. Well, look, we are out of time, Stef. So
thank you, Paul.
I want to really thank you. I mean, I love all these nuggets. As I said, I generally feel like very naive, but I appreciate the knowledge that you've given me to help me be more informed as I talk to other people in the industry as well. So thank you so much for sharing, for being generous, and sharing those many years of experience, and I'm sure some painful experience along the way too. So that's what I found. So thank you so much. And for those that are tuning in today and want to get in touch with Stef, hit up his website. So thank you so much, Stef, and I look forward to having you on the show next time.
All right, talk soon.
Thanks, everyone. Well, that's it for the show today. If you're interested in exploring more about Marketplace Distri, go and hit up that website. Or if you want to know anything about Merchant Spring, just go to merchantspring.io. That's it for this episode of Marketplace Masters. Thank you so much for listening. Till next time. Bye-bye.